Hey, Dad, welcome to the Father on Purpose podcast. And today, Lawson and I are going to talk about something that, frankly, we've talked a little bit about before in the past. For some of you, this will be a little bit of review. However, we're going to introduce you to a tool and a resource that we hope you will go take advantage of. It's totally free, piece of cake, and is from our partners, Man in the Mirror and Manhood Journey. Together, we partnered on a resource called the Iron Circle, and it's got an Iron Circle worksheet. We're going to talk all about it today. But here's the core issue and question we're going to address on today's show. How do you surround yourself with godly counsel? When you read through the Bible, you see this theme that one of the themes you'll notice is that only really a foolish person or a wayward or lost person would just walk alone through life. But a lot of men, that's where we are. That's where a lot of men are. And we feel alone. We've insulated ourselves and protected ourselves. But man, we want to encourage you. Go find some godly voices to speak into your life. And not only do we want to encourage you generally and talk about some scripture verses that deal with that, we're going to give you a very specific tool and show you how to use it on today's show. Before we go much further, as we start this new year, remember two things. Number one, this show doesn't get created for free. We need your help. Go to manhoodjourney.org/guard/GUARD and consider becoming part of the monthly support team that makes our ministry and our show go. We have more monthly supporters than ever from more than 20-something states, several other countries outside the U.S. We're so grateful, and we need your help to continue to grow the show and reach more dads. Along those lines, go support our sponsor, Range Leather. We love Kyle Koster. Those guys are wrapping up a bang-up year. They had a great 2025, released some brand new products. You should go check them out at rangeleather.com. That's rangeleather.com. And then when you do, use the code MJ15 and you'll get 15% off of your order. Go to rangeleather.com. Start the year off right. You got a few weeks before Valentine's Day, Dad. Get after it. Lawson, as you and I have talked about this idea of, specifically the Iron Circle Worksheet, we're going to talk about what that is and how to use it. But you have been one of those guys who throughout the course of your adult life, you've not walked alone. You've had text threads with buddies. You've had workout groups. You've had godly counsel. You've met with bosses and friends and elders at churches and pastors. In fact, one of your old friends in Kennesaw area has become a friend of mine now, Craig Bowler. We've had him on the show. And that's an outcropping of how you've been pretty intentional as an adult man in leaning into relationships with other men. First, would you say that's an accurate assessment? And second, why did you do that? Like, what were the things that drove you to not just walk alone and to find some godly counsel in your life?
Yeah, since maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago when you first mentioned Iron Circle to me, and then I was talking about you on the last episode as part of mine. I've been thinking about this a good bit, and even thought back, like, where in my life have I not?
Mm.
Where
Why are you
in
so
like, huh?
Why are you so negative?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
It's a
like
new
why
year, Lawson.
gravitate to
Let's start the
that
show
thought?
on an upbeat. Come on.
I've been super blessed, man. I think there were uh, a lot of seasons in my life where I can look back now and go, yeah, I was running solo. And
Really.
I think dads that are running solo
It's
are
a little
in danger.
surprising. I feel like you've been more intentional.
Yeah. No, no, no. I mean, I've got a good, healthy list, and I am so thankful for these guys. But it really didn't start until, like, I can think back when I was young, when I was in high school. One of my summer jobs was working at the school board for the maintenance department, and I did that with a guy named Barry Lewis, and his father was our boss, and his uncle was kind of a foreman.
Okay.
His name was Rennie Lewis.
Rennie. Okay.
Rennie, yeah. Man, he was just, I just looked up to him, and he didn't say, "I'm gonna take you under my wing, Lawson, and you
Yeah.
need some mentorship."
But it
He
was
was just
obvious. It was just
huh?
obvious.
Yeah, right. He didn't have to say the words. Um, but he was there, he asked questions, he listened, he was a good he was 2 decades ahead of us in life. He had kids and a wife, and he was, I think he was just a like, they grew their own vegetables. They lived out in the woods on some property, and they were just a really neat family at the time that
Yeah.
I thought was different. I don't wanna go too far down this road, but it does help from a context standpoint. My mom and dad did not really raise me Christian.
Gotcha.
In
Okay.
fact, there was some, I'm you know, eh, I don't think I called it this at the time, but it was sorta cultish that they got into this, new age. It was a combination of new age and some Middle Eastern stuff. It was just this whole mixed bag of, like, it was for a teenage boy. I was like, "I don't know what I believe, but that scares me. That doesn't feel right." And so, just being totally transparent, when I'm listing my mentors from a spiritual standpoint, my dad is not on the list.
Yeah. Gotcha. And
Um,
I bet that's probably true for many guys. If I'll do informal surveys occasionally when I'm speaking
yeah.
in conferences, and I'll ask about the room, who in here had their dad as a spiritual mentor. It's not usually very high.
Mhm. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Um, but fortunately, God had thrown some other people and kept placing them in my path, along the way. But I'll say this, and I'll wrap this part up, is it's on us. Like, we have to
Mm,
want it. We have
yeah.
to look for it. We have to accept it. And I think that's a big step early on
Yeah.
in, like, let's not even get into the Iron Circle worksheet yet, because first, do you want to do this? Do you want to go alone? And are you a believer that going alone is dangerous?
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
you know, because if you're like, "Nope, I don't need anybody," eh, please stay tuned, because I hope we can convince you that you're wrong. But if you are eager for that, you know, brotherhood, and for someone maybe who's been down the path beyond you, and you're open-minded to asking questions and then listening and taking some of that advice to heed, then this show is for you.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is it's a little bit like the Iron Circle worksheet would be a little bit like handing a recipe to someone who is not at all hungry or they're not at all interested in eating right now. And you go, all right, look, let's go back a few steps and ask ourselves, um, do we think it is wise to walk through life solo? Um, kind of, and the more kind of sheltered you are, let's say, in what I would call a bit of an American mindset, maybe the more you suffer from that sort of thought pattern.
Mhm.
Um, for folks who've lived outside the U.S. or are from outside the U.S. or have traveled a bit, I think most other cultures are more communal.
Me too. Yeah.
They're more
Yeah.
familial in terms of connections. There's more relationships. There's more, even like just shows of affection. When we traveled to Africa, guys would walk holding hands. It wasn't
Mhm.
weird at all to see that happen,
Mhm. Right.
and there's just more affection and more connection. Where in America, we tend to have a bit more of a independent mindset. It's kind of
Mhm.
woven into our constitution. It's written on, brick walls in DC, uh, nobody tells me what to do. I'm independent and all that. And there's some, interesting ideas connected to that are healthy in a sense where you can be an independent thinker and you don't just go with the crowd. There's some of that. But the Bible is very clear on this topic. Only a fool walks through life alone and listens to no one. Like
Right.
that's just
Yeah.
straight up. That's the majority teaching of both the Old and the New Testament is that your life, especially if you are a Christian, your Christian life is not meant to be lived in isolation.
Mhm.
A few quick verses. We've talked about some of these on the show before, but Proverbs 11, where there's no guidance, a people falls, and an abundance of counselors, their safety. Proverbs 12:15, the way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Proverbs 13. April and I were at an event uh, with a gentleman, and we both just remarked that um, This guy clearly needed some guidance. He clearly needed some guardrails, and he clearly needed some input. However, it was also clear he had no interest in hearing it,
Mhm.
right? Like it just there was only words coming out. There was no interest in having anything go in. And that's not the time. Well, it wasn't the place, of course, but it's not the time to tell somebody, "Hey man, you're a fool. You're walking in a foolish way,"
Right.
until they're kind of ready to listen, right?
Yeah. Right.
Um, Listen to advice and accept instruction that you may gain wisdom in the future. Proverbs 19:20. So
Love that. Yep.
I don't know that if someone listened to the Father on Purpose podcast, um, and they chose to dial in and spend a little time with you and me, that they would be super resistant to these ideas. Like if you're listening to this show right now and you're like, "Hey, having wise counsel, that's the dumbest thing ever." Like, oh,
Right.
how did you find our show? Like, call me, text me, because I want to know how on earth did the search algorithms drop you into this show if any of this is striking you as wildly offensive. Um, what I think's fascinating though is it's a little bit like the example I've used before about seeking wisdom and finding counsel. Is it's one of those things that's like the physics of hitting a home run in baseball, and you're like, wow, this does not seem connected. Well, let me explain. If you look at the physics, the math, and the physics of hitting a home run in baseball, it's extremely, extremely simple. You get down to a projectile coming one direction and then a device going the other direction, and in encountering the projectile at a certain spot in the universe where the force of that and the angle of impact all contributes to the ball going 400 feet over a fence, right? Like the math is not complicated. The math of a really good drive in golf, also extremely simple. How to make 100 free throws in a row, very, very simple, right? The math, the physics. Just do this. Like you could make a robot
Mhm.
who could never miss a free
Mhm.
throw.
Mhm.
I don't think most guys are going to hear we should have more godly counsel and go, nah, that's a bad idea.
Mm.
Where they're going to get tripped up, right, is how.
Right.
Because it sounds like a good idea. And of course, I don't want to be called a fool. Okay, so clearly I should be chasing this. But man, I'm not totally sure I know what to do next or where to get started.
Yeah, I had to take a step back and kind of reassess. Something that jumped out at me on that Proverbs 12:15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes. And you think you're doing fine. You think you're going right down the right path because in your own eyes, what you're doing is right. You know, you don't. Maybe you've missed a couple of warning signs and you don't really realize you're about to go off the waterfall. Um, and so I think step 1 to me, and I wanna hear how this idea of Iron Circle, specifically the name and the concept of it all, and now that it's a manhood journey tool, go back and fill me in on exactly how this thing began. But, to me, I think number 1 is, are you open to the fact that you may not be doing this as completely as you might want to, or as you might like to. And so I think this worksheet, I've been taking some holiday time and just kinda getting some thoughts down my own self and thinking about the growth areas and thinking about other guys, that represent that growth area to me that, I
Yeah.
wanna reach out to. I haven't done it except in a few cases. I've really been showing some appreciation and encouragement trying to do that to some of these buddies, but I haven't yet gone down the road of, hey, so look, so I'm just kind of thinking out my iron circle. And
Yeah.
you are someone that came to mind when I think about what I want to work on as a growth area in my life, blah, blah, blah. And can I lean on you a little more than maybe I used to?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
You've got to be open to the concept of, yeah, I'm gonna do something with this thought. But will you kind of bring us up to this point, on how the Iron Circle came to be?
Yeah, and before I do, I'll tell you a brief story. I was at coffee with a friend of mine named Ross about 3 weeks ago. I've known Ross for 20 years, and maybe more, actually. We've been really good friends. He's one of the guys I would call in my inner circle. Just we don't see each other as much as we'd like because of our lives and a little bit of distance, but we were having a conversation over coffee, and I was expressing frustration about a certain topic, and and he just asked a question that stopped my mind for a moment and revealed to me that I was basically being a bit selfish.
Hmm.
I was missing the point of like I had 10 blessings in one hand and I had one thing in another hand that was kind of frustrating.
Mhm.
And I was just
Mhm.
focused on the frustrating thing.
Mhm.
And he asked a question that kind of pointed me back to the blessings. You know, it's like the guy who has a house and a car and a wife and kids and like, you know, life's pretty good, but you know, he's frustrated at his golf handicap or whatever. And somebody just goes, "Hey,
Yeah.
have you forgotten all the good things in your life?" And I the reason I say that is because that Proverbs 12, a fool thinks he's right in his own eyes. It's tempting to become foolish in our thinking. Even as Christians, believers, with the Holy Spirit inside, we can be tempted to think foolishly and be focused on. And as a guy who spent the better part of the last 20, 30 years really invested in mentorship, being mentored, writing books, content about mentorship,
Yeah.
I don't have this totally figured out, right? I'm not flawless in this area. And I need people who occasionally see what I'm doing and go, you may think that's good in your eyes, but in my eyes, I see it different. And I really appreciated what Ross said and very valuable. So like that's hot off the press. That's less than a couple weeks ago. And it was a rebuke, but it was a rebuke in the form of a very clever question. And I appreciate him doing that. So Ross, if you're listening to this week's episode, appreciate you, bro.
Yeah,
Um,
well done, Ross. That's
so
funny.
so about a year ago, we met some guys connected with the ministry Man in the Mirror. One of their board members, their
Mhm.
executive director, they're a guy who leads their fatherhood initiative. And so I started building a relationship with this guy, Scott Maudesley, who's a tremendous guy. Lives actually, Lawson, really close to where you used to live in Kennesaw. He lives
Mm.
in
Yeah.
north of Atlanta. And Scott and I began talking about was there a challenge that the guys at Man in the Mirror had that they wanted to help, you know, explore and try to solve that we might also have at Manhood Journey, and would it make sense for us together to try to solve it rather than just go try to solve it separately? I love trying to collaborate with other
That's
ministries.
fantastic. Yeah.
We've done a ton of collaborative projects. We've launched Bible apps with people, tons of stuff, written content, and so for me, collaboration is a blast. So what we decided to do is we said, you know what we need to do? We need to build something for, and it's aimed at, and I'm hesitant to say this because some guys may dial out, but listen, I'm gonna tell you who it's aimed at, but it's not for that group exclusively. Um, it's aimed at younger men who may be 20 to
Okay.
35, let's just say rough age range. You may be in your 20s or your
Okay,
30s.
so I don't need it. Thanks. Gotta go. Bye.
Oh,
I don't have to do this?
another year of
I just
this.
heard that I don't have to
Golly.
do this?
Just when I thought 2026 was going to be different, Lawson shows up like he didn't change at all. So for those guys, because of a number of factors, relative youth, relative, no offense, but relative immaturity compared to later in life, and this sort of wild card of the guy who's 25 or 30 grew up being able to ask a device a ton of
Mm.
questions
Mhm.
that you and I couldn't ask 40 years ago.
Gotcha.
Um,
Yep.
Even things as simple as like driving directions or a recipe or how to convert cups to ounces or whatever you might need to do. The current generation of 20-year-olds have had the access to unlimited information in the form of YouTube videos and now Chat GPT and other, AI tools, uh, which
God, I
has
didn't think about
created,
all that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what it creates is um, an environment where in s-
Yeah, we're prone
in
to
s-
isolation.
we're prone to asking for advice from machines,
Mhm.
and rather than go to other humans, so
Mhm.
so it's just one more bean on the side of
Yeah.
the
God, I didn't think
scale.
about that. Yeah,
that
you're also making me think about, like, schools today and learning
sure,
today is
sure,
like
yeah. I mean,
you're alone,
what
you're not in the classroom surrounded.
right. Well, I was putting our podcast into ChatGPT recently, and I was like, "Hey, I'd like to reach more dads with the Father on Purpose podcast. What ideas do you have for me?" Which I don't think is a bad idea. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
against that. However, that's taking the place. That hour I spent, interrogating
Mhm.
ChatGPT took the place of me sitting down with you, or me sitting down with a board member, or me
Mhm.
sitting down with a friend who runs a
Yeah,
podcast. And you kind of go, huh, I want to be careful that
yeah.
I don't just turn, all the machines and the internet into my mentors. Um, for mainly because a couple things are true, right? One is for the younger generations, the machines will tell you whatever you want to hear. Like if you've interacted with Chat GPT at all regarding anything that's life related, how do I coach my kids' baseball team, or how do I change the oil in my car? It is very affirming. Like
Mm.
by default, it's like, oh, you got this and you can do it, and let me just show you how. It almost talks to you like a loving dad or mom. Like, and you kind of go, huh? And so psychologically, I think that's kind of interesting and something that Christians should keep their eyes on. Uh, because I'm not saying never take ideas to AI. What I am saying is I think that it won't ever challenge you the way a friend might challenge you. Right. It wouldn't have asked me that question that Ross asked me over coffee.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right.
Right,
It's
right,
not.
right, right. Yeah, that's a
It's
good way
got a
to say
vested
it.
interest in being my friend, where Ross has got a vested interest in helping me be wiser.
Yeah.
And so, okay, knowing that, we decided to work with the guys at Man in the Mirror and essentially leverage a tool that we built several years ago, but we made some tweaks to it. We made it easier to use. We made the format a little different. And here's the quick flyover of what we're talking about. We're talking about the Iron Circle Worksheet. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see me holding up my most recent version. It's a one-page document. And what it's intended to do, it's not intended to solve every biblical counsel problem you've ever had in your life, but it is intended, especially if you are like mentor-less, or you're in a place where you have very few or no godly counselors in your life. It's most helpful to you, and especially if you're younger, it's most helpful to you. Now, if you're 50 years old, like I am, you should still have 55. I'm 55. Let's be clear. Um, you should still you should have godly counsel in your life till the day you die. And I repeat, you should have godly counsel in your life
Mhm.
till the day you die. In fact, as you get older and you have more influence, you have more money, you have more leverage, you have more people under your command, generally speaking. I would argue that there is a premium placed on wisdom the older you get. You got a little time on the clock and probably lower stakes when you're 25 than when you're 55 or 45 or 65. So and you got more time left. Where some of I don't have that many Christmases left, right? And I'm not sour or sad about it. I'm looking forward to heaven, but I'm just saying, at 55, one would assume I have far fewer Christmases left than I have, still on the
Mhm.
calendar.
Yeah.
So they each become increasingly important as we go. Every year has a bit more of a premium the older that you get.
Well
So,
well, and we also encounter things that we've never encountered before. We were talking before the show, like I'm much closer to 60 than I am to 50, and my mom is dealing with some dementia stuff, and
mm,
it's really taxing and scary, and I don't know what to do in a lot of these cases. But God has put a couple of people in our path that said, "Look, I know exactly what you're going through. Here's what you gotta remember," or
mm,
we encourage you to be super patient. You're gonna have to repeat yourself constantly. Don't let that and so I've never dealt with that. I'm almost 60, it seems like, gosh, 6 decades, I ought to have figured it all out by now, but man, there's so
mm.
much in life that comes at us. You just don't you just have no idea, it's
Wait a
all
minute.
new.
Wait a minute. People were encouraging you to be patient, telling you to repeat yourself often. Are you sure they weren't telling you how to be my podcast co-host? Just that sounds like some of the same advice they would give you if you go, all right, look, Ken Evans podcast. tell me what I got to do. And they're like, oh my gosh, you just got to be patient. Okay. You just got to repeat yourself
You'll have to you're
over and over.
unfortunately gonna have to say it over and
Don't get
over.
mad at him. Don't get mad at him. He doesn't know what he's doing. Okay. He doesn't mean it. So we decided to lean into, and to your point, yeah, you cross these bridges you've never crossed before. The Iron Circle works like this. It's the reason it's called Iron Circle. Proverbs 27:17 is one of the more famous proverbs we see about mentorship and counsel. And it says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And the idea is, of course, that two heads are better than one. And like Ecclesiastes said, a cord of three strands cannot easily be broken. Sad for the guy who falls into a pit and has no friends. There's no one to help him up. And so it's the idea that we walk through life stronger and better when we're walking with other people. And embedded in the metaphor of iron sharpening iron, and if you've ever heard any sermons on this topic or anything, hopefully you've heard a preacher or an author speaker bring out the fact that that's not a painless process. Like if you think about iron sharpening iron, there's sparks flying.
Mhm.
It's like blows and heat and friction, and so it's not like as soft, cushiony, velvety, smooth toilet paper. No, it's not. It's not meant to be soothing and
Mhm.
comforting. It's not. It's
Yeah,
by
it's like
design.
grinding and banging
It's
and
banging and grinding and
hard.
challenging.
Yeah.
And so, when you bump into people in your life who are godly men that agree to give you some input, you should just at some point expect some sparks to fly. You should expect a little bit of friction. That doesn't have to be hateful. It doesn't have the guy sharpening the sword is not trying to damage the sword. That's not his intent. But his intent is to shape it and make it sharp. And in that process, he's taking off some rough edges, which
Yeah.
involves friction and removal
Yeah.
of, so
Yeah.
embedded in the metaphor, it's actually pretty handy if you think about it. So what we built is this idea that there's a few things that I see guys who occasionally they'll come into our email thread, or I'll meet them at a conference, and they'll ask, how do I find a mentor, or that kind of line of questioning. And what I would love to encourage guys to do is don't think about finding a mentor as much as surrounding yourself with godly counsel. I'd rather you think about it like you're in the middle of a circle, and around you there are other voices, wiser, sharper than yours, around you, that have you kind of quote unquote surrounded. So that's why we wanted to go with the idea of the word circle. It's not, an iron line. It's not an iron tip of the mountain. It's not just an iron, one thing. No, it's the idea that around you, you're encircled by godly counsel. And then the iron obviously comes from Proverbs 27:17. And that's how the whole idea started. It was designed to help younger men lean into mentorship. So when you download the Iron Circle worksheet, you're going to be dropped into an email series where every week
Mhm.
we show you how to use it and how to lean into the mentors of your life. So if you say, I don't know where to get started by downloading the tool, and then we will email coach you from there, and we'll help you. You may wonder, where do I find the time? Where do I meet? How do I find these guys? What do I say to them? How do I ask them? What if the guy turns out to be a jerk? Okay, we're going to cover all that in a series of emails every week, and we will coach you on how to get the most out of your Iron Circle worksheet.
So, what comes to mind, I was really fortunate to have when we first moved to Louisville, or actually about 3 years after we moved to Louisville, and had a couple of young daughters. I got to work for a guy named Doug Cobb, friend of yours,
Yeah.
and, he didn't ask me to join him. I worked for him, and he said, "Hey, look, every Monday, you and me and Brian are gonna start, our weeks off in prayer. So we're gonna meet up at the church. I got a room set aside, so I'll see you there next Monday morning, 6 a.m." And I freaked out, dude. I was a
Really?
young Christian, Yeah, he was my boss. He was I mean, and Doug Cobb at the time back then, I don't know, maybe still is, but he was kind of a bigger than life character in the city of Louisville. I mean, everybody knew Doug Cobb. Um, and I was fairly new in my Christian walk, and I was intimidated by prayer and sharing openly. And, I was like, and I didn't know what to expect, and sure
Mm,
enough, that first Monday came, and, Brian kicked it off, and he just we literally got down, the 3 of us, on our knees and kinda leaned on a we each had a chair, and Brian just started praying out loud, and I was like, "Oh boy, it's gonna be my turn," at some point, um, and Brian went on for, like, 15 minutes.
wow.
And I'm saying that in shock now, that's not that big of a deal, but at the
Mm,
time, I'm freaking out, like,
yeah.
I'm gonna have to what am I gonna pray about? What am I gonna talk about? And I don't wanna just be like,
Fantastic.
"Thank you, Lord, for breakfast and this food to
Yeah.
nourish our body. Amen."
Right. Right.
Um, and so you're talking about doing something hard and shaving some of these hard edges off or sparks flying, and it's scary, it's intimidating. That was one where,
Mm,
fortunately for me, the mentor said, "Here's what we're doing."
mm,
And God had placed me in a position where I was just like, kinda like, "Okay, yes, sir, that's what we're doing." And what happened, though, was I began to crave those I couldn't wait on Sunday. I was
that's
like,
so great.
"Tomorrow morning's gonna be awesome." And it helped me a lot, it sharpened his iron sharpened my iron. We were in it together, but we were surrounding that activity with prayer and
Yeah.
scripture. And I
Wow.
think that's a big piece, um, that I don't want us to leave out in this generally speaking conversation. And I'm leading you to mention something that you and I have talked about before, which is this is not like I want to be able to do 100 push-ups every
Mm,
day.
yeah.
And so, I'm going to put that down as one of my growth areas. Um, I want to go back into mine and give even more thought to in each growth area, what is some scripture that I want to place in that box, that kind of goes with that. And I mean, you know me, I'm a overthinker and I love these kinds of things, but without it, I don't want it to become what could I just be a better dude, or
Right.
better guy or something like that. So let's talk specifically about some maybe potential ideas for growth areas, with in mind that circle that I got to be a part of with Doug Cobb and Brian, where Doug started it by reading a verse, and then there was no, like, "How was your weekend?" None of that. It was, "Alright, so, here's the verse." He read the verse, and then bam, started praying, and that helped me in a way that without the scripture and without the if we were just getting together to talk about something we wanted to improve on, that would have been different, but it was specifically spiritual growth through prayer and scripture.
Well, real quick, just in case Doug listens to this particular episode, know Doug really well. He's been a friend and a occasional mentor of mine as well, and has spoken into our ministry a lot. Been very valued and like one of the smartest guys I ever meet with.
Yeah.
And it's not that he does. I don't think he at all intends to be intimidating, but I do find his intellect to be a bit challenging. Like not in a negative way, but like
My gosh. It is.
wow, just really smart. However, so just in case he's listening, let me just tell a story where everybody can, if they know Doug, we can put him back on the same level terms with every other human. We happened to go to Israel about 8 years ago. Just so happened to be on the same trip with Doug and his wife Gina Kopp. And April and I knew them a little, got to know them even more, had a blast. We'd be at dinner and maybe ride on the bus and sit next to them and all that. So we had extended time with them for about 10 days. It was a blast. In fact, we ended up flying home at the same flight. We're in the same taxi cab, all that. Uh, we walked through Hezekiah's tunnel. For anybody who's done that, you go down these spiral staircase, you go underground, and then you go to this little narrow passage that's like 1,000 feet long, and you're underground. It's like a cavern, but it gets really narrow. And you're walking into some water that's been flowing for thousands of years since Hezekiah's men dug the tunnel, like true story. And you're walking, and at times the walls of the passage are like shoulder to shoulder, like maybe 18, 19, 20 inches across. Like, it's really narrow. If you're claustrophobic, it is not for you.
Mm.
My wife wasn't feeling well that day. She did not go through Hezekiah's tunnel. I'm not sure she'd have made it, or she'd have passed out. We'd have drug her through it. Because, man, if you don't like small spaces. But at one point, Doug was one or two people behind me in the line of about 30, 40 people. And at one point, our leader through the tunnel says, "Hey, everybody, you might need to duck in this next section. It gets really low." And I hear Doug Cobb behind go, "Except for you, Kent," which was absolutely fantastic. And he happened to be right. I was able to walk through Hezekiah's tunnel the entire distance without once bending down. So there you go. Relative.
When you said you were going to bring him back down to human terms, I thought he was going to say, "Not you, Kent," and then bam, he hits his own head.
Well, he's tall enough where he would have had to worry about it. But I did not have to worry about it. He was right. When we go looking for godly counsel, yeah, of course, if you want ripped abs or a better golf swing, okay, I suppose. I'm not going to say don't put that on your list, especially if you're in your 20s and that's your like main objective in life is to be cool and look amazing. However, I think what you're going to find is the value of the counsel you can go get is heightened significantly if what you're looking for is more spiritual or maturity related, or has a bigger impact than just something you could like maybe control with a better golf grip, right? So for example, I'll just tell you what's on my current version of the Iron Circle. And there's nothing super scientific about the fact that we put 4 things on this sheet. That's what fits on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And it's not in a sequence. We got them A, B, C, D just to keep your brain right. But it's not that one is more important than the other, or that you should always have 4, or that A is better than D. I wrote down 4 things the last time I went through the process of thinking through my Iron Circle. Number 1 for me, leadership growth. How can I grow as a leader? That's a big topic, big range. It's, it can include everything from finances to sleep patterns to physical health to managing people, you name it. But I know I need to grow as a leader continually. Fathering adults. So for me, one category is being a dad of adult kids. I need to learn how to do that. I've never really done that before. I've told Alex, who produces our show, he's the guinea pig for everything. He's the first, right? So he's the oldest. And so every time I got to teach somebody to drive or talk about sex or whatever, he's the first one. I'm just trying, he's the one I got to try on. Now he's the first adult. He was the first to get married. So I'm having to learn how to be a good dad of an adult son, a dad of a daughter-in-law, etc. I'm trying to learn that. I put on here, and this is not necessarily recommended, but I did put on here the words reading list. And the reason I put the words reading list are I want to continue to read. I think reading's a good discipline, even outside the Bible, which I would never say you should replace your Bible time with, some other book, even if it's a good book. On top of reading my Bible every day, I want to have there are certain guys I go to who I know read a lot, like 30, 40, 50 books a year guys. And they're like my canary in the coal mine. They're like my filter. And I just go, "Hey man, out of the last 10 books you've read, which is one I should read?" And they tell me, and I'm like, "Great. I don't have to go figuring it out." And because they know me, it makes their recommendation better. But for me, yes, there's a couple guys, Trey, Chris, Mark. I go to these guys when I want some ideas for what to read, just because I know they're voracious readers. And then I put ministry strategy. For me specifically, right now, at this time in my life, I put ministry strategy. What should we do with donors? What should we do with the podcast? Should I write another book, etc.? Those kind of questions I'll take to a list of guys, John, Tom, Nick, Justin, others. And so for me, I don't think any 2 guys will have an Iron Circle worksheet that looks identical.
Yeah.
And here's my encouragement. At the risk of wanting to take another whole entire hour to unpack how to use this Iron Circle worksheet, which I would love to do, let me say just a couple of framing comments that I think will help you. Number 1, I think it helps to start with the areas of growth rather than the mentors. So if you're thinking to yourself, "Man, I really do want to have wise counsel. I'm just not sure who and how and where we should meet and what I should ask them," just for a moment,
Yeah.
stop all of that thinking.
Yeah. Don't worry
Turn
about
it all off.
Right.
And instead go print out the Iron Circle Worksheet, hand it to your wife, and say, what should go in box number A?
Mm,
And let her tell you,
mm,
um, I wish you were less angry. Or let her tell you, I wish you were more financially responsible.
mm.
Or let her tell you, I wish you knew scripture better. Or I wish you weren't so out of shape. Whatever. Let her speak into your growth areas. Why? A, she has the most to gain if you improve as a person. B,
Fair.
she can
Yeah.
see it the best. She can see it the best. And you may say, well, I'm single. I'm not married. Awesome. Go ask your best friend. Go ask your pastor. Go ask your mom or dad. Print the sheet out and say, hey, how do I need to grow? And then once you know, oh, I need to be less angry. Use that as a hypothetical. Not that that's ever been my growth area. Oh my gosh. Okay. 40 years and counting. Okay. Not that that's ever been my, but what you will start to notice is the guys who are really peaceful.
Yeah.
Like it will happen. Or maybe an easier one, easier mechanically. I think dealing with some challenges like that can be harder. An easier one mechanically might be, I want to be better with my finances. Let's use that as an example. I want to have either more money saved up, or I don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck, or I don't want to be so stressed out, or whatever. Then the minute you write that down, guess what you're going to find?
Mhm.
Oh, your brother-in-law is a financial planner, or that friend of yours who you bump into at church every weekend says something about the stock market, and you go, wait a minute, and you just find out. It's not that you got to go find
Yeah, I know what you
Warren
mean.
Buffett or
Yep.
Jeff Bezos or some billionaire. You just got to go find somebody who's a couple clicks down the road from you. Uh, you don't need the most brilliant financial mind in the world. You need somebody who's going to spend a little time with you over coffee, asking you some questions about what do you want? What do you need? Right. And so for that, I would encourage you, don't get hung up on who you should go find godly counsel from. The who will take care of itself. Focus on the what. Focus on the what. What is it that you need at this stage of life? Is it career advice? Is it marriage advice? Is it money advice? Is it how to get off internet porn? Whatever, like big struggles you have in your life. If those are your growth areas, you're going to notice. It's going to happen. Prayer, backyard barbecues, Sunday school, the dude you sit next to at church, um, it's going to happen relatively organically. And I've just seen it happen a million times. So my encouragement is focus on these areas of growth. And so what are some of the ones, Lawson, for you that you wrote down on your Iron Circle worksheet? What are some things that you find at this season of life and this stage of life you want to grow? How do you want to grow?
Yeah, I put frequent and deeper God/Holy Spirit connection through scripture and prayer.
Mm,
Um, and I've got I'm filling this in as we talk and just as I have some quiet moments. Um, Emotional peace, some
mm,
joy, less anxiety, deeper friendships. I really want to focus, this next phase of my life on I've got good friendships that we touch base periodically, quick text or maybe a phone call every now and then, see somebody in person. I wanna be the one that invests deeper into friendships. Um, and then I also put mental acuity and intellectual challenge. Um,
nice.
partly this came to mind because, what my mom is dealing with, and I think there's some health problems that you just can't stave off, but there are some that we can. And challenging our brain, I think is as I'm approaching my 60s, I wanna think about that and maybe just lean in a little more than just taking for granted, that intellectual stimulation will come. I wanna be more purposeful with that. You said something that I wanna make sure we don't skim over, and that was and I think you're right, by the way, I'm not arguing with you, but so
Oh,
the
argue with me. Go ahead.
growth areas are important. Absolutely. Step 1, main step. But what you said was the who will take care of itself, and I wanna remember that there are some I've been in these phases of my life where, we move to a new city or, whatever's happening in your life. Maybe you don't have. Maybe you really are like, I feel alone. I don't want to be alone and I don't know how to solve for that. We can talk about that in more detail down the road, and we also have had episodes before that maybe we can figure out and put the show
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
show notes, other episodes that do talk about, finding guys and helping surround yourself. Um, but so a phone call in this order of effectiveness, maybe slash impactfulness, I would say having your iron circle and using it. Okay,
Mm,
so this may be getting a little bit of the how of like, okay, so what do I do with it? What do I do with this growth area? And maybe I have a person or two in mind. What do I do with it? From most to least effective, I would say in person, and then maybe if there's physical geographic distance, a video call. Those are a dime a dozen, all kinds of services out there that easy to do. And then third would be phone, and then last would be a text. In person, and I wanna underline that even, Hebrews 10, came across this in one of the Iron Circle weekly emails. Hebrews 10, verse 24 and 25 urges us, it says, "Consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together." I think in-person conversations are better than a text conversation.
yeah.
And so, this is going to take this is going to take a little bit of time where maybe you do have to step out of a comfort zone, or maybe you do have to carve out an additional 15, 30 minutes, and make the effort to get on a video call with somebody in your life that you want to link up with and have a tighter bond and work on one of these growth areas together. But in person, man, that makes such a difference. And where two are gathered in Him, in prayer, working on something together, asking for his help, I think
Yeah.
that is the tip of the pyramid of effectiveness.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking down my list and I'm looking at 50% of them are local. If I just do a quick scan,
Mm,
50% of them are local. The other 50%, I have been with them face to face, like we've met in person. Um, but I will connect with them remotely by phone or by Zoom. And Zoom is really important because of facial expression.
right,
I remember one time, a friend of mine named Jim in Cincinnati, he said something to me on a Zoom call, and I didn't get angry, but I was ready to kind of debate a little. I was like, and just my face gave it away. And I remember him leaning into the camera and going, looks like you don't agree with me.
right,
And so then we had a conversation about, well, it's not that I don't agree. It's that I see some challenges and blah, blah. But he would not have caught that if we had not been on camera.
right,
Uh, so there's a layer of coaching and disclosure and advice that you're going to get if someone can see even how you react. I mentioned this on podcast recently. You and I did I met Josh in Texas, and we were together, and he said something, and my face scrunched up, and I was like, and he goes, "What tension does that cause for you?" And I
right.
just remember that question. It was like
What a
such a great
brilliant
question,
question.
but he caught it because we were in the same room. And if we'd been on a phone call or a text, it would not have been. Text is 2D. Like things get all wacky on text, so I'd be really careful with mentoring by text message. But let me just say this, Lawson. I know you and I we probably won't spend a lot more time on this specific topic. Um, but here's what I would say to the guy who says, I'm open to the idea of godly counsel. I know I probably need more. I'm not sure how. Where do I get started? Let me just plant the seed for what are the main reasons guys do not go get godly counsel. And there's one that most guys say that is a total smokescreen. It's a smokescreen. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I
And it
want to
is,
hear this.
I don't have time.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't have time for that.
I have said that and said that and said that.
And
You're
here's
right.
the thing,
Yes.
right? If you got cancer, you'd find time for chemotherapy.
Right.
So the question is not so much do you or don't you have time, or should you go spend 20 hours a week with a mentor and not, coach your kid's baseball team. I'm not
Right.
debating that we all have a calendar that we got to manage. What I'm saying is it's usually, it's a defense mechanism. It's a defense mechanism. And, I would just encourage most guys, if their knee-jerk reaction is, I don't have time, just for a moment, suspend that and consider the fact that you might have wisdom cancer. You may have a real problem, a real lack of wisdom. You may have a real marriage problem, a real finance problem, a real sexual purity problem. You may have a real problem, and it's not going to get better unless you go take the medicine. The medicine might be another guy who can walk with you through this season of life. And so carving out the time is very, very, very important. And so I think time is a smokescreen. And then I think there are some underlying challenges that where Satan wants to play in our little brain space, and we don't just call them out. Like, I love calling out the enemy and just saying, here's what's happening. Most guys who don't want to go get godly counsel, there's 3 or 4 reasons. One, apathy. They're like, I don't really need it. Doesn't matter. It's fine. I'm doing good. Who cares? My marriage is okay. My kids don't hate me. So there's an apathy, or there's an arrogance. They're like, well, I'm the smartest guy in the room every time I show up. So what does anybody got to teach me? So there's an arrogance. And so that's it's a barrier. It's an underlying, you wouldn't say it out loud. I can't find anyone who can match me intellectually. Like, you wouldn't say that out loud, but that's kind of what's happening in your brain. Or the flip of it is there's an insecurity. There's an insecurity. Like, you're too scared. You're like concerned that if you tell somebody you're really a financial train wreck, you're 2 weeks away from being evicted, you're concerned what's going to happen to your image and your public persona. And so there's an insecurity, there's an arrogance, or there's an apathy. I just see those all the time. I see those all the time in my own life. Those are the reasons I might resist feedback from my wife or my kids or from you or anybody else. But also very, very important, there needs to be some degree, right? One of the Bible verses that both I love and it doesn't scare me. I'm not like afraid of it, but I'm just reminded of the power of God. It says that God shows favor to the humble, but he resists the proud. He resists the proud, but he shows favor, or your translation might say gives grace to the humble. And I think, you know what? I'll take my chances being at war with lots of different people, or, a physical battle. I don't want to be fighting God. So when God says he resists the proud, I've told my boys that before.
Guess who's going to win in that resistance
war?
I'm
like, look, man, your pattern for the last several weeks has been so disrespectful to your mom. I'm actively resisting you. Now, anything you ask me for, other than like food, shelter, clothing, is probably no. No privileges, no friends, no sleepovers, no nothing. Why? Because I'm resisting you, because I'm pulling you, because I want you back on the side of wisdom. Like, I'm not against you. I'm not for you, but I'm resisting your behavior, man. I am resisting your behavior. I've told my kids that. They're not over and over, but there are seasons. And I'm like, bro, I don't want to be the guy God wakes up and goes, not that he ever sleeps. I know God doesn't sleep. Got it. Don't email me, email Lawson. But I don't want God to get up in the morning and go, Kent. Okay, we really got to resist this guy. Like, hey, everybody, quick meeting, whiteboard. He puts Kent Evans on the whiteboard. He goes, remember, the word this week for Kent is resist, all right? Everybody clear? Everybody, let's go get him, okay? I don't want that to be the dominant theme. And it says he resists the proud. I don't want to be proud. So when I walk up to another guy and I go, hey, man, you really seem to have your financial act together. And like, all humility aside, like, I'm not looking for numbers, but like, am I right? Like, you pretty much seem like you have your financial act together. And they go, well, if you mean like I'm not financially stressed and I don't live above my means and my wife isn't mad at me, yeah, then yes, I do. And I'm gonna go, sick. Can we have coffee? Can we talk about how you got where you are? Or I'll say that to guys about their marriage. Hey, man, you seem to have really walked down this marriage season, like through a challenge, or for a decade or 30 years. you seem to have a really strong marriage. Would you mind, like, could we grab coffee and I just pepper you with questions about how you got where you are? And I bat 95 out of 100. Like, nobody says, nah, nah. A sincere seeker of wisdom is, I don't find that I hardly ever get rejected. Now there's the
Mm.
trickster. There's the trickster who's like, "Hey, I heard your sermon last week, and I really would like to just understand it better." And so they go to have coffee because they want to debate with you about 9 different things they disagreed with you on. Okay, that if you're that guy, you're going to have trouble finding as much godly counsel as you want. But if you're sincerely seeking wisdom, I just don't find that door is closed very often. And so I just want to encourage guys. Time is not an excuse. Time is not an excuse. This could take 5 minutes a week, if you're tight. And look for the things underneath: insecurity, apathy, arrogance. Look for the things where you think nobody has anything to teach you, or you're afraid to disclose your real situation, and just see if in those you can get past those things and join me and Lawson and forming your Iron Circle, so that the year of 2026 is not a year where you walk alone again. Let's make 2026 different, and don't walk alone. Surround yourself with godly counsel. And one of the reasons you should do this is because you are not a father on accident. So go be a father on purpose.